is basically a game of averages. So what I believe is you should be performing well in all your GS papers, at least above average performance. Be choosy with respect to the number of tests you take, because you can't keep on writing tests. At the same time, you can't escape from taking tests. So PYQ, breaking down the question into themes, add value through flowcharts, data points, recheck it again and again. And that is how I think you will make a difference. Your 2 months effort is equivalent to your 2 years of preparation. If I give my best now, for suppose if I don't clear, I would have elevated my graph by almost 40 to 50%. If you are a very serious aspirant and somehow you missed prelims, that means you have read. Continue reading and take the exam as they are taking in the exam conditions. Take the question paper and write it back at home. It gives you an additional edge, and definitely you will be in the list probably the next year. So keep that hope and keep working.
Hello aspirants, and welcome to our yet another conversation series video. Firstly, a big congratulations to all the students who have successfully cleared the prelims examination of 2024. Now it's time for all of you to buckle up your mains examination preparation. In this video, we will be discussing the upcoming 60-day strategy for mains examination with specific focus on economics subject. We are joined today by our economics faculty Sudhir sir with us. A very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you, Paritosh.
So now that prelims is over and again students are preparing for mains examination, what should be the exact strategy for the upcoming 60 days?
So Paritosh, mains is basically a game of averages. So what I believe is you should be performing well in all your GS papers, at least above average performance, rather than over focusing on one subject and probably we are neglecting another subject. So we always have to remind ourselves that it is a game of averages, that I have to do well above average with most of the subjects. Another important aspect here is students generally will have trouble with respect to ethics paper. So when I talk about ethics, why? Because completing ethics paper becomes a challenge. So he should give more focus on this paper in terms of doing a higher, writing more tests with respect to this paper. So this is the primary important aspect which the focus should be. And the difference between prelims and mains is, in prelims identifying a question is very difficult. But in mains, if I have some idea with respect to my PYQs, I can judge to some extent like what can be the question that can come in the exam. Especially leaving ethics aside, other papers, I'll be able to say, okay, this is the area where there may be a question. So this type of intelligent analysis from PYQ, I think will help the student in terms of saving time and hitting the bullseye.
So as you discussed about analyzing PYQ questions, how exactly a student should approach the PYQs? We know its importance in prelims examination, but what should the approach as far as mains is concerned?
So Paritosh, actually when I talk about PYQs, for different papers, to be very specific with respect to ethics paper, let's say ethics, let's take ethics. So in ethics paper, I can divide case studies probably into 9 to 10 categories based on PYQ. So these 10 categories are the areas where any case study falls. So once the student has identified that, yes, these are the 10 types of case studies or 10 to 11 types of case study where the question can come, probably the student, he will be free with respect to putting any case study in this particular bracket. So that is the first job when it comes to ethics paper especially. When it comes to economy as such, what can the student do is, so most of the questions in economy are coming from 6 to 7 different areas. For example, when I say economics, questions are either from inclusive growth or growth and development or agriculture, food processing, land reforms. And most importantly, every time there will be a question on inclusiveness and inclusive growth. So for example, there were questions on how financial inclusion will lead to economic growth, or how will capitalism will be becoming inclusive, etc. So these kind of questions are definite to come. That means my central theme remains the same. The central theme is inclusive growth. And in and around inclusive growth, there are different areas. One area is job creation. So that means with respect to employment, what are the questions, previous year questions that have come? I will check from 2013 till date, and then from 2000 till 2013. Then another area would be poverty, because it is linked to inclusive growth. So with respect to poverty, were there any questions earlier? Okay. Then jobless growth, impact of LPG. So this is another area where I'll check like what are the questions that have come up. Okay, so I'm dividing it. Then the role of agriculture in increasing farmers' income. So these are questions. So either it can be food processing increasing farmers' income, or it can be the success of agriculture increasing farmers' welfare. But the theme remains same. The theme is inclusiveness or inclusive growth. So these are the areas once I divide, and then my next step would be what were the previous questions that were asked. And then the thought comes like what else can be asked. So this time which the student spends will definitely give him a boost. So firstly, the student has to definitely read all previous questions undoubtedly, including updation of the data. That means the old question papers, probably when he's reading, the answers, there's no updated data, but the student has to update this data. This is very important. When it comes to economics, especially, the data becomes the central point. Then I'll talk about another theme. Let's say I'm talking about economic growth. So it's a theme. So in and around economic growth, what were the questions that were asked? For example, economic growth and inflation together will indicate decent growth and stable inflation. Does it indicate that Indian economy is in good shape? Suppose this was a question. That means I'm taking growth at the center and I'm linking it to several other factors. Suppose if I say foreign investment is critical for growth, and what are the other things other than foreign investment that can help economic growth situation? Okay, so, or there were questions in 2018, I'll just give you one more question here. Savings is an important factor for growth. What are other things other than savings? But means my theme remains the same. Theme in the center circle would be economic growth. I will put savings or maybe foreign investment or startup. But the theme remains the same, or financial inclusion, role of inclusion with respect to growth. So once you identify this, if I can map these themes, hardly there will not be more than 10 themes. So growth is one theme, inclusive growth is another theme. So there will not be more than 10. If the student can identify themes in this manner, he will be definitely able to get very good scores. So obviously it will reduce my preparation style. It applies to any other subject also. How do I do it? So once themes are identified, I've read the previous questions. I will collect data from my mains 365. So thanks to Vision IAS Mains 365, where all the data is released at one place. So I will take that data and I will be using the data in my questions. So that is very important observation. Then I will take the topper sheets. So one more important, very important resource is the topper sheet. I expect every student to use this resource. Why? Because it will reduce your burden to a great extent. For example, I'll just give you a simple example. In ethics especially, let's say ethics and essay, which are very, very important areas. Since I can't be a master of philosophical essay right away, in another 60 days, nobody can read books. So one thing I can do is take the topper sheet, collect the quotes and quotations from the philosophical essays which they have written. Okay. And maybe the structure and the style which they have used, I will observe. And I will put all these quotes at one place. And that is one way of looking at, at a faster pace, I want to grab things. Another way is for ethics, there are different examples of public service, real life examples, etc. Few the student will prepare himself, which are unique examples. But there are some who have just cleared and they have not prepared the examples. Now, topper sheet is a resource. Now, I collect all the examples at one place. I will add my flavor to the examples, and that is how I make my examples unique. It's a shortcut within the 60 days. I will take the topper sheet for economy. Let me take the data from the topper sheet. Of course, data I have to cross-check once, because data is something even a topper can make a mistake, or even the data can change at times. So better would be cross-check, backtest the data and see the style of writing, the flowcharts which the topper has used. And that will definitely enhance their preparation in this short span of time. The student should remember that it's not possible that you will read everything in detail in the 60 days. That is never possible. So many students end up reading and never practicing any answer. Now that can backfire. So reading and writing should go hand in hand. And I can practice every day one question at least, or two questions you're writing. Keep a target of 5 questions and keep writing. Increase the number of questions. First write 2 and then keep a target of 5 and check the time. Okay, or if you are very bad in case study, every day at least take one case study, analyze one case study. This will give you immense strength in terms of acing this mains exam, which is just 60 days away.
So you have very comprehensively covered the subject economics as far as other subjects also. Again, you would like to summarize what exactly should the strategy as far as economics is concerned?
Yeah, specifically with respect to economics, I can tell economics, especially GS3, the scores are going a little lower. The reason being the student is not hitting the question. So generally what is happening is there is a question and you write some points which are not in line with the question. This is one thing. So of course, I'm not saying that if somebody is getting, if major chunk of the population is falling at 80, we should at least get 95. When I was saying game of averages. So if I have to cross 95 in every paper and touch 100 in every paper, that is what is game of averages. So few papers I've got 101 and suddenly one paper I get only 60. Now covering this 40 marks in optional becomes a big challenge, especially if the optional is not a technical subject or maybe like economics or maths. So it becomes difficult. Suppose from 270 to push it up to 310, it's a challenge. So therefore, that averages aspect should always be kept in mind. So in GS3 specifically, and specifically with respect to economics, if you're not hitting the question, so you are getting less marks because you are not hitting the question. So see to that you hit the question and always make the examiner's life simple. So don't complicate the answer and don't expect him to search. Examiner has knowledge. The person who's correcting, he knows what he's doing. You have to show him the answer and he should not struggle to look for points. So that is what I mean. The points should flow and the points should be visible for me without effort. And that will make his life easy and you will get that half additional mark. And that half additional mark for each question probably may give you 9 marks more for 18 questions in one subject. And that will push you an additional 50-55 marks, which will bring a huge difference in your scores. So this 50-55 marks is what I call it as value addition. And that should be there in my mind when I'm preparing. Otherwise, without value addition, there will be trouble. So value addition in economics, how do I do? So one is how well am I breaking my answer? Okay. Two, schemes and data points. Whenever I'm writing an answer, am I coming up with the data? Am I coming up with some scheme of the government related to the point which I have written? So I'll put all my schemes at one place. For example, manufacturing, sector-wise schemes I will divide. In manufacturing, what are the new schemes of the government? So these schemes, whenever skill development question comes, I will use Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Whenever there is loans related aspect, I will talk about credit guarantee schemes of MSME. So very clear, I'll put everything at one place and I will use these schemes and data to differentiate my answer. Another important aspect in economics is keep the graphs ready. And especially not for the 10 markers. I generally don't suggest for 10 markers, but for a 15 marker. Definitely graphs add value, but graphs have to be prepared. Prepare some 20 graphs or 20 flowcharts or 15 flowcharts and differentiate your flowchart also. Don't come up with the same flowchart in all the questions. Let it be different. Let him enjoy correcting your sheet. And probably that half additional mark you will get it. So once preparation is over, then comes the presentation and these points, which will bring a huge difference. And that can be also inculcated from topper sheets. So this is what so PYQ, breaking down the question into themes, add value through flowcharts, data points, recheck it again and again. And that is how I think you will make a difference.
How one should approach current affairs for economics per se?
So for economics, what I suggest specifically is don't dig too much into current affairs when it comes to mains. Already you have sufficient current affair knowledge because of your prelims preparation. So there's no point in spending a lot of time in grabbing current affairs, neglecting my essay or neglecting ethics or neglecting optional. Because my optional, ethics and essay are very important, no doubt about it. So I should be intelligent enough to understand which current affairs I need. For example, agriculture related current affair. Why? Because agriculture, there is a question in the exam. So I will only collect agriculture related scheme and current affairs related to agriculture. I'll be very specific. Similarly, manufacturing, joblessness, jobless growth, employment elasticity. That means employment as such is important or inclusive growth is important. I will only collect current affairs and data points with respect to these areas. So I'm very specific in selecting my current affair. It should not take me, I will not spend more than half an hour every day probably for whole current affairs. In fact, I can't spend too much of time when I have to maximize my scores on ethics and optional, or maybe my essay. So I have to be intelligent enough in managing my time. So select the themes and collect the current related to the theme. If I'm collecting some current, I should be in a position to use it efficiently. And hardly you will find direct current affair question in the economics paper where you find it is out of the way. If it is out of the way, it is out of the way for anybody and everybody. So we need not worry. So go theme wise, collect data. Already you have read current affairs for prelims, just revise it and collect it according and segregate it according to the themes. That would be the best approach. Don't overload current affairs with coaching material. That is my suggestion to the student.
As you also discussed, students need to write answers, practice answers every day. How a student should maybe incorporate the test series which they in the mains preparation strategy?
See, test series is a very important phase in mains. Why? Because many students think that, yeah, I've read the syllabus and therefore I will write it. But the whole challenge of mains is when you write answers. And you have never written answers earlier. Now, this becomes a very big hurdle for you. And such people, for example, I'll categorize students into two different categories here. One who has only read prelim and he has never read any specific mains related subject like internal security or maybe ethics related areas. So, which are purely mains specific. And there are some who have already given few attempts earlier. They have given 2 mains, 3 mains, and they know that this is their problem. I have a problem in ethics course. I have a problem in essay. I have a problem. So this is another category. So for those who know that there is a problem in these areas, now you have to take those tests more. You have to take the mentor's support, take somebody's support. I know one of my student, Pranav, so who has got or secured All India rank 60. So when we were sitting and discussing our ethics papers, we were basically looking at ethics and economy. So what we were looking at was one important aspect is, am I writing too much of flowery language, and because of which is it that my ethics score is 95? Did I push in more flowcharts and data, and that is the reason is my GS3 gone down to 95 or 80? Now there will be situations where you have done so well and you have done too much, and is that too much reducing your scores? So that is the reason I say keep things simple, and you need to know where to stop. Okay, so that is one more important factor I think the student should figure out, and that you will get to know through mock tests, right? Take some mock tests. You need not write a mock test every day, but at least decide that I will write 4 mock tests or 5 tests for ethics, or each paper I will write 3 tests for maybe GS1, GS2, GS3. And again, optional is so very important. If somebody lands up with 220 in optional, then again, it's going to be very tough. So it's very important that you get that 270 at least in optional. So you should know where your weaknesses are. If my weakness is optional, then I have to focus more in optional. If my weakness is general studies, then obviously I have to take more tests in GS. So it is again student specific, but tests you have to take. And be choosy with respect to the number of tests you take, because you can't keep on writing tests. At the same time, you can't escape from taking tests. So it should be a middle path, as Buddha talks about. So that clarity is very important. Student himself should sit and think what has to be done. So, and you have to take few subjects, tests are compulsory. You can't escape. For example, essay I've never written, I have to write. There's no other option. Ethics I've never written in exam condition, your first minds I were writing. So you have to take few tests. Optional also, that it applies for optional as well. So this is how he has to strategize.
So this whole preparation process for mains becomes sometimes very overwhelming for the students. How to manage stress and anxiety in the upcoming days?
See, I can tell one thing for any student who's not in his last attempt. Your 2 months effort is equivalent to your 2 years of preparation. If I give my best now, for suppose if I don't clear, I would have elevated my graph by almost 40 to 50%. This happens only under pressure and stress. So I'm talking about a positive aspect of stress here. Because you have that stress of 60 days, you seep in so much of information, you learn so much also, which is not possible under regular conditions. So look at stress from this aspect, that yes, I am able to learn what I couldn't learn maybe in 2 years. It's like doing a double PhD in this 60, 70 days, and that is happening in stress conditions. So admire that stress, number 1. Number 2, during preparation, stress is okay. Don't carry this stress to the exam hall. So there are 2 types of stresses. You can't be too free when I'm preparing, when I have targets. I have daily targets. So there will be stress. Take it and sit with the stress. But don't think about what will happen if I don't clear. Your stress should be with respect to reaching the daily target. I've kept this target. Did I reach the target or not? This should create stress. It is not what my score is going to be, whether I will be an IAS or an IPS officer. That should not be creating stress. My daily target, if it is creating stress, it is good. And when I'm going to the exam hall, when I've done what has to be done, then there are other 101 factors that may play, which I am not in control. This I will tell myself when I'm entering the exam hall. This applies to anybody. It applies to a sportsman. It applies to any warrior who is fighting a war. So when I'm getting into the war, okay, I will not carry this stress, and I will say, yes, I have done what has to be done. Now it is the game has begun, and just I will play the game. And that mindset is required in the exam hall. But this mindset is required when I am preparing. That is a stress for completing my daily targets. And whether we will be successful or not, that nobody can tell right away. But I can only say I have done justice to my preparation. And if you are doing that, you can be happy and you can stay focused with the preparation. I say enjoy the preparation, enjoy the stress of reaching daily targets, and you will go a long way, which you don't imagine. So that is the only solution the student can have. But unnecessarily, they don't panic and don't think about future. And your present movement of 60 days is very crucial. So that should be utilized efficiently. I think that's the key. That's the key. Probably do whatever you want. If it is creating a lot of trouble, then avoid negativity. Don't meet people who are putting on negative thoughts in your mind. And these are something which students already know because they have come to this stage. So that is something you know, but you don't follow. You know what to do. So they have to do this.
Any last piece of advice for your students?
So what I suggest is there are two categories. One who have cleared prelims. So those who have cleared prelims, this is the best time. Why? Because prelims has become so unpredictable and it is a God-given opportunity. Use it to the maximum. Give your best in the 60 days. Those who have not cleared, you have to think about, there are two types here. Long term. Long term is what do I do? Do I focus on optional right now? Or do I focus on general studies? Have daily targets and compete along with those who have writing the mains. So I also suggest students sometimes like take the question paper on the exam day and write it as if you are writing the mains exam back home. If you are a very serious aspirant and somehow you missed prelims, that means you have read. Continue reading and take the exam as they are taking in the exam conditions. Take the question paper and write it back at home. It gives you an additional edge and definitely you will be in the list probably the next year. So keep that hope and keep working. So that is what I tell the students.
Thank you, sir, for coming and guiding our students very comprehensively.
Thank you, Paritosh.
Now, students, it's your chance to maybe use the strategy shared by sir in your ongoing mains examination strategy. Kindly use the 60 days very wisely and strategically. Lastly, all the very best and thank you so much.